Hey, my creative friends. My name is Shannon from shannonstudio.com. And we are here tonight to talk about a creative life and creative life tip. Anything that motivates us or is interesting, exciting about creativity. And that's what we do. And I do a little bit about Sweden, which since I've been living here for a year. Hey, Joan. But I don't have anything about Sweden today. It rained all day today. We were going to go out and do something, but it rained. So that's all my report from Sweden. So this morning I was reading some articles about creativity, and one of the things I came across was the idea of the Medici effect. And so I'd heard of the Medici family in Italy before in my art history classes, and so I was familiar with their name, but I wasn't familiar with what the Medici effect was. And basically it is the idea that when you bring other, I'm trying to think, did I get that right? When you bring other a diversity of people from different areas, occupations, interests in life, and you bring them all together, then it starts to create this synergy, this exchange of ideas that grows. And the Medicis were a family in Italy, Florence, and they basically ran things for almost 300 years. I didn't realize that they had that much influence, that much time. I think it was like mostly 300 years. I think they were like 20 years exiled, and so there were little periods of time where they weren't in control. Hey, Deb. But for the most part, they were in control. So this was Florence. This was from like 1434 to 1737. Long time. And they had power and wealth. And they were into commerce and banking. And the banking was so much so that they became the bankers of the Vatican. A couple of Medici became popes later in time. A couple of the daughters became queens in France. Let's see what else. They were just this powerhouse of a family. And some people attribute them and their money and patronage of the arts for kind of like a starting of the Renaissance. And so you know me, when I do my little threads of thinking, I was like the Medici effect, studied the Medici family, and then I went on to the Renaissance. And but basically the Florence was the birthplace of the Renaissance, and some people have different views. France has the view that the Renaissance started in France. Italy has the view that it started in Italy. Hey, Tricia. And there's different Renaissance periods, and so I mean it's a big thing. I'm no expert, but it's a big topic. It's got a lot going on, but it started for my purposes and from what I remember from my art history class and things. It was started in Florence, and a lot of the big artists, and I believe the Medicis were patrons of Michelangelo. And it just is interesting to me on a couple of levels. First off, the Medici family, there were certain characteristics of the Renaissance. One of the characteristics was humanism, and I was under the impression that it was a separate idea. It was totally rejecting Christianity, and so that's what I thought it was. And I think that's what it led into, but the Renaissance period is 200 years, so you got to believe that what it started out as and what it ended up as are different things. But Renaissance humanism is different than humanism. So just that. And so that, when I read a couple of these things, it surprised me that, and I'll read you a couple of quotes. One is from the artist.me, and it didn't say who the author is, but it says, humanists shared the belief that God created humans with so many potentials and abilities, And to get the best of them, one has to dignify himself and esteem himself rightly. So they felt that they had the responsibility to act on this belief and make the most of it, make the most of themselves. So there was a shift in the idea of the church or the state was responsible for your actions and for you. It was a switch to you have these things and you're responsible. And it starts to shift to the individual. Another quote is, in the revival of Platoism, Renaissance humanists did not reject Christianity, quite the contrary. And it makes sense because they were the bankers for the Vatican. Some of them ended up popes. So it wasn't like they did reject it, at least in the beginning of the Renaissance period. So that's one thing that I thought was different. Another idea is that they had a positive willingness to learn and explore. So they were thinkers. They were thinking about things. They were changing how they looked at life. They were switching back to a classicism of Greek and Roman, how they did education and just different things. They started to actually switch back as a rebirth. So they took some of those things prior and brought them forward from the past. But one of the things was to learn and change the education. The Renaissance took into account culture, art, politics, economic rebirth, literature, education, math, philosophy, astronomy, astrology, science. So it covered a lot of topics, and there was a lot of evolution going on. And they also had, like I said, this faith in the nobility of man, this Renaissance humanism, and really started to focus on man as the individual, man as the measure of all things, and started to move out, and also started to move out of religious only art. And prior to that, it was kind of like everything was religious, everything revolved around the church. So that's why I think some people get the idea that the humanism just totally did away with church. It just expanded. So it was no longer just the church patronizing religious art. It wasn't just the church's view. It was it started to be a broader context. And then there was the naturalism, where there started to be more about science and realism, and there were some one-point perspective and vanishing point and some different things that came out in art. And then they also started to study the unclothed body, like Leonardo da Vinci did autopsies, so he could draw parts of the body. And they watched, Michelangelo and Leonardo watched autopsies so that they could see what the body was like, because before it had been, and I think it was against the law, if I'm not mistaken, that you couldn't just have a body to just, draw from. And so that was opening up. Secularism, so non-religious themes were starting to come, where, like I said before, it was just exclusively religious themes. So it's just this really huge time of change and awakening and going on in Europe, all over Europe, but basically starting, I don't think a lot of people really argue a lot that it didn't start in Florence. And you gotta, even though not everybody attributes it to the Medici family, you gotta figure, if you have that much power over a 300-year span, you have that much money, and you're actually paying for certain things, that when people start making art and making sculptures and writing and doing, they're bringing these people together, it does have a momentum. It does start to shift people thinking. Let's see. Some of the artists and some of the art. Leonardo is the Mona Lisa, the Vitruvian Man, the Last Supper, Michelangelo, the David, the Creation of Adam, Sistine Chapel. So, I mean, there are some fabulous work that went on during this period that was specifically started to be built before, in a bigger way. And it was, yeah. I mean, obviously we look at it a little bit more romantically than probably some of it went. I mean, there was still huge poverty. The Black Death had been like 50 years or so before, in the mid 1300s. So there are several things that went on. But as I was studying this, I was thinking about our time now. And as I was thinking about it, I started to compare. And what I started to think of, and this is just totally me, and maybe people are going to be mad that I even bring this up, but I really feel like there's a Black Renaissance going on. And I say a Black Renaissance because you've got to put a name before the Renaissance, because there is only one, the Renaissance. But and I say a Black one because that's the impetus of Black Lives Matter and what's going on now. There's a focus, and I think the focus is on the Black population. So, but when I looked at it, I thought, there was there was a pandemic, the Black Death in Europe. And what did we have just before this started? Or still now, even? It's not like it's over, but it's like, we had a pandemic. The positive willingness to learn and explore. All over social media, that is what Blacks are wanting whites to do, and what whites are admitting that they're doing, is to educate themselves or educate ourselves. I don't know. It's kind of hard to put me. I'm kind of like a moving target sometimes. To be educated, to learn, to listen, to have conversations, to have a general shifting of mindset. So that was another thing that I saw a similarity. Then the faith in the nobility of the individual, and what's happening now is the nobility of the Black person being elevated from what has been previously put on them in the past, and to recognize it and to dignify it. And and another one, poverty. There was extreme poverty. And, they said an economic recession. I don't know what our pandemic's doing, but it kind of looks like an economic recession's on the horizon for a lot of people. And so that's another similarity. Social and political upheaval of the time. I thought, yeah, similarity. I don't have to go into that similarity. An intellectual revolution, because they were changing education. I think that's what's trying to happen now, is that the Black community is trying to educate the rest of the world in order to have change happen, in order to see their plight, in order for others to join and help move their case forward in a positive way. The art shifted to realism and emotion, and the art coming out, because I follow a lot of people who are artists, the art coming now is filled with emotion. It's not so much realistic, we're still in a different style, but it is very emotional based. That's a similarity there. Personal focus on the personal effort and responsibility that people should make, and that again is the accountability, the responsibility that needs to be taken by enforcement, by all of us individually. So there were so many things as I'm looking at this, and like I said, I am no expert on the Renaissance. Because they have scads of books. If you're talking a 200-year period, there is a lot of information to be had. But there were just some real glaring similarities. And even like the pandemic, they had the Black Death, and then with us with this. I think we have a shorter window. But I just thought, the other day I was thinking, I wonder what kind of effect the pandemic had. I was talking to somebody, I don't even remember. And then when I saw that, I'm like, oh my goodness. Things play, and they say history repeats itself. So I am just throwing out the idea that we're entering a Black Renaissance, that we are, that's something to watch. I mean, to see if it's happening. Part of a creative mind is having some personal well-being, but also to be able to be a problem solver. I've said this numerous times. Be a problem solver to see what society needs, and then step in and help with whatever things we can do. If this is the beginning of the Black Renaissance, then what can we do to be putting forth good ideas? And yeah, it's just, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about this idea? And maybe you know more about the Renaissance. You can see more tie-ins, maybe not. Maybe that there's some glaring things that are off. Just like when I was looking at it, some people thought, it really wasn't a rebirth of, well, there's just lots of opinions about it. So, but this is my opinion. Since I get to do my videos, this is my opinion, and share your opinion. We can do that here and have some ideas. So if somebody knows something more about the Renaissance, that would be great to hear your thoughts about it in the comments. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. No, there's not. So thanks, Trish. So yeah, that's it. The idea of the obviously pandemic for a lot of us, a history making thing that we're part of what's going on. Black Lives Matter, and just I just feel like the Black community as a whole. I say Black Lives Matter. I've read some of their things, and some of it I kind of go, I don't know, but their platform. But I do that with some of the political things too. That doesn't mean I don't support, because I'm not 100% on board with everything they say. So, yeah, put that out there, see what you think, and we'll kind of watch. We'll kind of see if this is, and how things move and where they go. So that's it for tonight. Remember, you have a creative heartbeat, so listen for it. And I will be back tomorrow for day 324. Bye.